This is my review of Spike Lee's Masterclass. For those of you who may not be familiar, Masterclass is an online educational site where people who have excelled in a particular field teach master classes, hence the name. In Spike Lee's Masterclass, he of course shares lessons he's learned from his more than 30-year career as a filmmaker. In the module on script writing, Spike says he has to do extensive research before he starts writing. It's interesting that he doesn't type and writes everything out longhand, so he obviously doesn't use software like Final Draft. Spike says he writes 4 to 5 pages a day. He writes best in the morning and must write consecutive days until the first draft is done. He can only do 4 or 5 hours at a time, and after that, he says, he finds his concentration is no good. This is in contrast to other prolific filmmakers like John Hughes, who would go on marathon writing sessions and reportedly wrote some of his movies like Pretty in Pink in a weekend. Spike suggests you select a handful of people to read your screenplay and take their feedback into account. Take what works for you and disregard the rest. If you're going to write with a partner, make sure you have the same sensibilities. Make sure you complement each other. One may be good at dialogue, while the other is good on structure. Deadlines are a blessing, Spike says. Deadlines put a fire under your butt, especially if you're a newcomer in this industry. One revelation that Spike makes in his masterclass that I found really surprising, since Spike is a classically trained filmmaker and teaches film, is that he says he never pays attention to the first, second, and third act structure of screenplay writing at all when he writes. He says he goes off instincts and how to tell a good story, and this has obviously worked for him. In one module of the class, Spike talks about the importance of casting and relates how it took more than 6 auditions for Halle Berry to land her role in Jungle Fever because Spike thought she was too attractive to play a crack addict. Spike also shares advice on how to network and stresses that you can't let shyness get the best of you. As a filmmaker, you should always have the elevator pitch for your movie ready to go in case you happen to run into a famous actor, as Spike did with Lawrence Fishburne before casting him in School Days. If you're an inspiring actor, you should always carry headshots with you, Spike recommends. If you happen to run into a director you want to work with out in public, chances are you may only get that one chance to approach that director, even if you have to interrupt the person eating at a restaurant with their family, as Spike says sometimes happens to him. In another module, Spike talks about how he directs actors. He talks about building a rapport with the actors and developing a sense of family by having meals together. He stresses the importance of knowing how each actor works. Some give their best performances on the first few takes, while others need several takes to warm up. Spike says it's important not to criticize an actor harshly in front of the rest of the cast and crew, and to be diplomatic in delivering constructive criticism. I found this kind of surprising since Spike has a public persona of being extremely outspoken and unafraid to speak his mind on any given issue. Also in the masterclass, Spike talks about the value of rehearsing before filming starts in order to find out how the written words in the script sound in the mouths of real people. One of the most interesting modules is Spike breaking down his iconic camera angles, such as shooting characters in Do the Right Thing from above to indicate weakness, since the camera is looking down on them, and shooting an actor from below to indicate power, since the camera is looking up to them. He describes tying ropes around Samuel L. Jackson's radio DJ character in Do the Right Thing and having grips pull Samuel toward the camera so fast that one time Samuel almost crashed. I'm sure those grips got an earful from Samuel L. Jackson. Spike also breaks down how he filmed Edward Norton talking to himself in a mirror in the movie 25th Hour so that the camera is not visible. A real bonus of the master class is that Spike Lee shares storyboards for Malcolm X from the October 1991 production. He relates how storyboards simplify the often complex filmmaking process. What shots do we need to tell the story is how Spike boils it down. Spike also goes over the importance of rigorous auditioning for a director of photography or cinematographer, just like you would do with casting. Don't just look at someone's highlight reel, look at something they've done with length. You need someone flexible who can not only execute your ideas, but also come up with their own. Spike recommends that you not be overzealous in planning shots when you're first starting out as a filmmaker. He says you should just try to grasp the basics of storytelling, and later, when you have more experience, you can get more elaborate. Also, when you're first starting out, be realistic with your budget and how much you can raise. He gives the example of School Days, which he knew would cost at least $3 to $4 million. So he shelved that project and did She's Gotta Have It first for $125,000, which he raised himself. Spike says you can search online to find budgets for movies that have a similar feel of what you want to accomplish with your project. Spike shares how he was an innovator in crowdfunding. For example, for Malcolm X, he approached wealthy African Americans like Oprah, Prince, Michael Jordan, Janet Jackson, and Magic Johnson to fill in the gaps of financing that Warner Brothers was not providing. In a shrewd move, Spike announced at a press conference that he had to go to his fellow African American athletes and entertainers for finishing funds on Malcolm X. And the next day, Warner Brothers started fully funding the movie again. Obviously, Spike is not only an effective fundraiser, but a savvy marketer as well. When shooting, Spike recommends that you treat locations like gold so you can come back for your next film if necessary and not have to pay for any damages. He says you should ask the cast and crew to be as quiet and respectful of the locations and the surrounding neighborhood as possible. Considering the era we're in with the ramping up of the Black Lives Matter movement and people around the world speaking out about racial inequality, one of the most insightful modules in Spike Lee's Masterclass is about the importance of diversity in front of and behind the camera. If you're in a position of power and you can dictate who to hire and who not to hire, and you don't use that power, then what is it for, Spike Lee says about the importance of hiring diverse crews. He talks about his fight to get Black Teamsters hired on the production of Malcolm X. Spike told the Teamsters Union that he was going to have the Fruit of Islam, which is the Nation of Islam's security detail, to drive the trucks for the production. And then, of course, the union magically found 4 Black Teamsters who could drive. Spike also talks about the importance of the director setting an example, being on time and working as hard as the cast and crew. He also recommends having a discussion at the beginning of each shooting day about logistics, like where to park trucks with sound, lighting, and other gear so as to prevent mishaps like production vehicles showing up on screen in a shot. It's important to start out the day with everyone on the same page so that everything runs smoothly. All in all, I found Spike Lee's Masterclass really substantive and informative, and I highly recommend it.